Today, we are joined by Dr. Sarah Nasir, DO FASAM, an addiction medicine and family medicine physician, telemedicine leader, and founder of Transcendent U. Dr. Sarah's work sits at the intersection of medicine, human behavior, spirituality, and systems building, helping high-achieving people who look successful on paper but feel internally misaligned. Alongside clinical leadership roles in telemedicine addiction care, she is also advising and supporting health tech innovation, bringing a deeply human, whole person lens to how we build the future of care. In this episode, we will explore Dr. Sarah's journey and work she is building today and her perspective on whether healthcare and health tech are headed next. Dr. Sarah, welcome to HealthTech Heroes.
Hi, Fasa. Thank you so much for that warm introduction and that warm welcome. I'm really excited to be on HealthTech Heroes today and share my journey with you.
So, Dr. Sarah, one thing that we'd like to start with is this is about HealthTech Heroes, so heroes have an origin story. Let's dive right into your origin story. What first pulled you towards medicine, and what part of that decision was personal, not just professional?
Great question. We're going to go way back when I was a little girl. My first desire in life was to become an astronaut. I loved everything in space, loved looking up at the stars, knew all the constellation names. I don't anymore, but I knew I wanted to go into space. And then my mom, she was a doctor. When I was in second grade, we went to India. And at that time, when we were traveling from Bangladesh to India, at the airport, we got out and they have people who try to help push trolleys to earn some income. And when they heard that my mom was a doctor, they showed her an immense amount of respect. And she told me afterwards that, see, when you become a doctor, you get not only respect, but you also get good prayers and good wishes from people that goes up to God. So there's no other career that has the honor and the blessings that a doctor gets to earn. And that really stuck with me. And then a few years after that, I saw my mom bring up a patient because her clinic was actually downstairs of where we lived in Bangladesh. And I saw her spend that time with that patient. She was crying. My mom was giving some advice. I was sitting in one side, like studying, and behind me, my mom and the patient were talking. So yeah, in Bangladesh, HIPAA doesn't exist. So you can get away with doing things like that. You know, your patients are kind of your family. And she would take me often to the hospital when she was doing procedures. So all the nurses knew me. When she was on overnight shift, she would keep me in the room where she had the doctor's lounge. I would be staying there and sleeping with her all night while she was doing night shift coverage and stuff. And once again, like the rules and regulations abroad are very different from how they're here. So my mom was able to do that. And so I got to see so much. I got to see inside the OR when I was under 11 years of age. Like they would put me on the side in sterile uniform of the operating room, and I would get to see things like C-sections. My mom was an anesthesiologist abroad, so I got to see a lot of that. Then we moved to the US, and after I was playing badminton with my friend in high school, my partner said afterwards, well, if you go to space, you really can't help people, but if you become a doctor, you can help people on Earth. So that's when I decided, like, okay, I think I need to become a doctor. No, I don't want to be an astronaut anymore. Plus, I'm too short. I can't become an astronaut anyway. Currently, NASA has a height restriction. And I didn't make that cut. And I'm not athletic. So that just also another like chopping block, say bye to the dream of becoming an astronaut. And then when it was time to apply to college, my uncle, he was saying when I was getting ready to pick what major to choose, he was saying, why don't you become an engineer? Because I know you want to be a doctor, but if you, for some reason, get into the medical field or you lose interest in it down the line, you have a good one to fall back on. And so I took his advice. It sounded wonderful to have a good backup option. So I became an engineer. My bachelor's degree is in biological systems engineering from UC Davis. And I really enjoyed the engineering process, but I still had a big heart for medicine. And I did everything to do the pre-med track and go into medical school. And so afterwards, when it was time for graduation, I took a gap year. And that's when I realized that if I didn't become a doctor, life would feel meaningless. So it had become a personal journey afterwards. After that, I applied and was able to get into West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine. When I found out about the osteopathic philosophy on life and medicine, it just really resonated with that holistic approach for me, where I love understanding things comprehensively, how things connect with each other. I'm a connection person, and it just made absolute sense. So that's how I chose my career path for which way to get my doctorate degree. And then in residency, I was exposed to the world of addiction, how it destroyed not only an individual's life, but the family's life, how it impacted society. And I had a great attending who just changed my mind about how I viewed addiction. So here we are today.
That is awesome. I want to actually double click on the addiction part. You actually touched upon it, but I would want to understand, like, what was that about the addiction itself that attracted you? Probably was like this one instance you saw a patient, that how dramatically their life changed with help versus without help, or how desperate people are. Whatever it was, what was your calling? Like, what happened there? Just an emotional angle to it.
So, in the earlier part of my life, I shared the same opinion about addiction as majority of the world probably does, where we think the person who is addicted is making poor choices. So there's something wrong with them. Lots of judgment and stigma against them. The first time, actually, addiction is everywhere all around us. I don't think we realize it because we don't have our antenna set to that frequency to receive that this is an addiction picture. We have tobacco abuse everywhere. Alcohol is all over everything we see, watch. I mean, even if you're walking in a grocery store and there's overhead music playing, the music contains paraphernalia references. It can be about getting high, like just those words, like one of the songs of like Justin Bieber or Keisha, their songs are so full of these references, and it's being showcased or put out into the world as gesture of romanticness or romanticism, gesture of getting along, popularity, etc. Right? So it starts young. And even when you watch the shows that are being shown to kids, it starts to be ingrained into the mentality as well. And then especially in the American society, like if you are not drinking, it's natural part of the social interaction system. So it's everywhere. We don't see it. I heard in my youth about family members who had problems with hard substances like heroin, alcohol, etc. And being a Muslim, we have a special set of stigma against that because it's considered a sin, and there's a lot of harshness against that. Also, there's a shame in being known as somebody who has that in their family or is struggling with that. Mental health is something that we already have difficulty acknowledging. So there's that as well. And then it can impact the way your standing is in the society. What will your extended family think? What will your boss think? What will your so and so in your social circle think? So a lot of that prevents us from talking about it, asking for help about it, or even recognizing it. It's like becomes part of, as I said, common social interactions and norms. So now I realize that I saw those, but I didn't realize at that time. The first time I realized that I was looking at addiction was in medical school. I was working in a rural town in West Virginia. This was OB rotation, and we were like, my attending was responding to a call for a delivery. And while she was doing paperwork, I was in the nursery. There was this baby in the nursery, and he was livid. He could not calm down. He was so uncomfortable. And the nurses were trying to relax him. But what turned out he was going through, what I realize now, is called neonatal abstinence syndrome. This is where if the baby is exposed to opioids in the mother's womb, when they are out, they go through the withdrawal because it's no longer getting that chemical from their mother's bloodstream. So it's basically what an adult would be experiencing if you chop them off cold turkey from a drug. And so the nurses at that time, they were just being like, how could the moms be so horrible? She's delivering a life into the world. Why did she use? She should have just stopped and quit, etc. And at that time, I didn't know anything about addiction. And I was like in agreement with the nurses that the mom did something bad. This poor baby, this innocent new soul is now paying the consequences for it. So later on, fast forward to my residency program, apparently where we were located, it was sitting on a route that went from Mexico and delivered heroin up to Canada. And we were one of the rest stops. So we were sitting on this heroin belt that went from North America further up north. And so another thing to sprinkle into that, apparently there was a doctor in town who was what's called pill mill. He would write opioid prescriptions to keep people happy, and that contributed to the opioid epidemic that was happening at that time. And so when they fired that doctor, our program inherited all of those patients. And the thing with opioid dependence is that if you cut up all of a sudden, the patients go into severe withdrawal and it is very uncomfortable. And that's exactly what we did. We gave them a 30-day supply of the medicine and said, good luck, take care of yourself. The patients were like crying, pleading, like, what's going to happen to us? Because you don't want to experience it. It feels like you're dying physically. And we didn't care much about it. Now, where it finally clicked for me that I want to do something about it was one patient case where it was a young man with an elderly father. We were trying to get him from the heroin to a medicine called naltrexone. This is something that blocks the receptors where these opioids come and bind to, and then that leads to release of dopamine. What we wanted to do is we wanted to come and block that receptor completely so there would be no opioids able to connect and cause harm in the patient. But to add that medicine, the opioids need to be out of your system. That means they need to be pretty miserable. And this guy just could not do it. The day before he would use, and this is like after fifth or sixth time of trying to get him on the medicine. Finally, I told my attending, like, what's wrong with this guy that he just can't quit, like just can't stop so we can actually help him. Look at his dad. He looks like he has aged over the months that we have been together out of stress and worry, the impact on the family. I was sympathizing with the dad. And then my attending, he says, this is where it clicked for me, is that, Sarah, you do realize that opioid addiction, it actually changes the brain. It is not just a person making poor choices. It takes over. Maybe it started as a bad choice, but after a while, it changes the body, it changes the brain, it becomes a disease. And if you don't take care of it at that time, you're not helping the patient. And for some reason, that moment just made me feel so ashamed, and it made me feel so bad because actually, I think this is the first time I'm going to say this, is at that time, I was doing a recovery of my own from something else completely different. I experienced some really difficult times during residency, and the trauma left me very broken, very shaken. I didn't know how to ask for help at that time. But now that I have healed and I feel braver talking about it, I'm doing something about it. We have started a movement called Bullying in Medicine with other doctors. You might have seen it on my LinkedIn profile, like all the posts, but I've been teaming up with other doctors who have experienced bullying in academic medicine and training and in their workplace as well to shed light on this. But at that time, I felt like I could relate to the person who was in recovery or in addiction of what it means of other people to judge you but not walk in your shoes. And I felt like I had judged, and now that I've walked in their shoes, I just felt really bad. I felt really guilty. I felt remorseful. And after that, my view of addiction changed. Um, and from there on, as I started to take care of these patients with more sympathy and understanding, I started to see the way their life story changed after they got the treatment. That was for me like curing cancer. It felt so gratifying. You see somebody who is malnourished, their cheeks sunken in, they have no job, they have horrible relationships, they're on the streets, to going to somebody who, my goodness, like I'm having somebody like flash before my eye right now, recovering, they get their weight, healthy weight back. They develop relationship with their parents, with their spouse. They can hold down a job and get promotions. The story changes. So that was like amazing to me. And so that's my addiction story.
That's so deep, and this also comes from it. There are parallels to your own trauma and going through this, and there are instances where you are passionate about something and something becomes an obsession. It's like things like this become like you're passionate about health, but a certain thing about the health becomes an obsession is exactly stories like this. And going back to your DO, where you said you like to bring a holistic view to things, you spoke about integrating mind, body, and spirit, and even expanding that into a broader framework. What was happening in your life when you realized that you couldn't separate these pieces anymore? How did you come about integrating different philosophies together as one huge possibility of curing a health condition?
I don't think there's anything negative about that. It just was, I feel like being somebody who had to go from a totally different environment, from one country, from one style, one culture, one religion to another place where it was just completely different. I already started to see that even though it looks different, we're still in that same human community, same planet. Like, feel like it started to help me understand of connection, that you may be in different location and one thing can influence another. My religious beliefs also, help me feel connect across time. So my migration helped me connect across space, and my religion helps me connect across time. And so I feel like I've always been somebody who is kind of like a bridge, kind of like a connection between different points. So when I first learned about the philosophies of the osteopathic principles when I was getting ready to apply for medical school and college. I spoke with doctors. I read about the four tenets of osteopathy. The body is a unit of mind, body, and spirit. The body has the ability to heal itself. This somatic dysfunction happens when something is out of order. And the fourth one is that when you approach health, you take all these four things into consideration when you're developing a treatment plan. These four principles or tenets were created by the founder of osteopathic medicine, Dr. Andrew Taylor Steele. And he was an MD, an allopathic medical doctor who was working in the Civil War. One of his children earlier passed away from pneumonia, something that could have been preventable. He was in the Civil War. He would see these soldiers who got a bullet hit on their leg go through the standard treatment at that time, which was amputation of the leg to prevent infection, to save the life. And that's it. The doctors in the surgery field were done. But they didn't see how it impacted the soldier's psyche afterwards, the depression that it led to. The doctor still paid attention to that. And then he saw how that later on further disease of the mind. The disease of the mind led to further disease of the body. And so thereon, he started to develop those principles that mind, body, spirit is connected. He's the founder of that holistic principle. After I learned that, bringing on my own background, perspectives, etc., and also taking care of addiction, I have gone on to develop three more dimensions that I believe is important for us. And I call these the Six Transcendent Dimensions. I believe when we are able to optimize balance in these six dimensions, we thrive as a human being with purpose, and it helps us become what I call transcendent, an inspired soul who transcends their limits, connects with their limitless soul, harnesses the power of purpose to live a life of that is fulfilling, thrilling, and leaves a legacy behind. Because I think that's why we're here, to create legacies. That's our purpose. But in health, following Dr. Still's principles of mind, body, and spirit, the body knows what to do. Our job as doctors is to give the body the support it needs and let it do its job. We're not smart enough like the body, so just let it do its thing. So that's how my approach to medicine came, and it just all makes sense. And another thing I like to do is, having learned about engineering and how the world works, how mechanics works, I bring that into this philosophy of medicine and now life, the transcendent philosophy. So I feel like I've gone from being somebody who looked up to the sky for inspiration to somebody who understands a little bit more about how the world works, to how the world within us works. Now, how do we fit in and give back to the world? I feel like I'm in that stage of my life now.
Can you name those three other dimensions? One is mind, one is body, one is spirit, and what are the other
Yes.
three?
So I'll start at the beginning. The six transcendent dimensions are the physical, mental, spiritual, social, financial, and aspirational. And I think once we are able to maximize on these, we hit our peak performance state, you start to get a different type of addiction. And this is the addiction we are designed for, which is the addiction to growth, contribution, and fulfillment. Your goals, your legacy. For me, one of the biggest goals. So, as a Muslim, I take a lot of inspirations from my faith. And one of the things that I loved that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said is that three things continue to benefit us after we die. And the first one is a righteous child who prays for you after you're gone. So your progeny. Second thing is beneficial knowledge that continues to benefit people and improve their lives. Third thing is perpetual charity. And so I feel the smart investor is going to invest in these three categories.
And as I said, we do undermine financial aspect a lot. We say that money is not important, but that basic level of financial independence is just as much important for your health. And there is a direct correlation with health and financial independence as well.
Actually,
Uh,
on that
yeah,
note,
yeah,
I had
yeah.
to go through a mindset transformation on that as well. I'm going to be audacious and say it's not just financial, basic level of financial
Mhm.
independence. I think it allows you to definitely at least sustain yourself, the basic level of financial independence. But I think we should actually be going for abundance. We need to learn and master how we approach money. It's not just a Muslim society problem that I've noticed, but I think we do have it more. But it is prominent in everywhere because we see corrupt people who misuse things, be attracted to money and power. So we automatically associate these two important resources with badness. Just because bad people are doing it, think these things are bad. And I think that's a very depreciating act that we do on ourselves. And this is where like the first pillar of transcendent is the transcend your limits. That mindset, this is one of those that I've had to reestablish a healthier relationship with is that you need money to do all three of the things that, the legacies that I talked about. Can leave your progeny behind independent and also educated on how to navigate money, how to handle money without falling into debt. Because there's a lot of spirituality that's in finances, and we just all have a very big blinders on. We're very tunnel visioned on the wealth aspect. So, if you can live your kids with an education where they don't have to touch interest, where they don't have to worry about financing their businesses, their ventures with interest, you have just set up a progeny that is going to be praying for you. And every time they do something good or they stay away from an evil because of what you have set up, that's a reason for you to be benefited. You're hitting the pillar of progeny and you're hitting the pillar of beneficial knowledge. If you can also instill that in them of how to navigate money in a smart way. So I think financial abundance is very important. We have a lot of work to do around money mindset.
Thank you very much for that. I think that itself will be a huge chapter, and especially for communities who don't think financial and power is that important. And
Or
I think
think that it's evil.
evil, yeah,
People
yeah,
think money
exactly.
is the root of all evil. Wrong way to do it. I think ignorance is the root of all evil.
Yes, that is probably true. I can see that a lot. And I would love to talk about this. You're not talking about transformation. You're not talking about. You're talking about transcend. It's like a level above transformation as well, the way I see it. And you are involved with a organization that you have started, Transcendent You, that supports people. When you look at it, Transcend You, nobody has, like, say, somebody has not heard about Transcendent You. Can you, for a layperson, explain what do you do, how do you support people, and what is the core mission of Transcendent You?
I really appreciate that question. And it makes sense that people will be like, "Well, never heard it. What is it? Number one, you have never heard it is because it didn't exist. I created it. And I like to joke that my sixth grade science teacher, he used to say that you cannot make up a word until you have a doctorate degree. So now I have a doctorate degree, so I can make up words. And so the mission behind Transcendent You is I believe that we are the authors, we are the drivers of our journey. We're the authors of our story. And so, just like I can tell a patient, this is the medicine, this is how you live, this is what you do, but I can't do the living for them. And I can't take the medicine and put it in their mouth and make them swallow it. Is a level of accountability that the person has to take. And majority of the people are okay with just taking a pill and just calling it a day or not taking it and not put in the work that goes into making themselves healthy, like from within, which is also like that osteopathic principle of personal accountability. Like you put the power back in the person versus now the way we live, we like to give away our power. We like to be influenced. We want to have somebody to blame, somebody to thank without realizing how much power we have in ourselves. And so the core pillars of transcendent is once again transcending your limits. So teaching yourself what is it that I should be thinking? The limit are my beliefs, are they limiting me or are they empowering me to go to the next level? Like for example, I said the money mindset. A lot of us think that it's the root of all evil. And so we just leave it that way. And why do we believe it? Probably because people that we look up to that are important to us have either lived according to that philosophy, or when we have looked out into the world, we see the wrong people doing the wrong things with this resource. And so we think that's basically the association. Money is causing the evil, not the person nurtured their evil side to take advantage of it. So it's learning how to advocate for yourself or first break free of those false beliefs. The next part is okay, now that you have broken free, now that you have transcended that limit, what is next? Because we always have to be tethered to something. That we need that North Pole, we need a direction to go towards. What is the next thing? So the next thing is connecting with your limitless soul. I believe we all are cellular creatures filled with cellular energy. Tapping into my religious philosophy, I believe the soul inside of us is like a more powerful than a nuclear energy. It is an energy that allows us to go from one cell to being a multicellular organism who just not only builds their body, grow in their body, but we create impacts out into the world. We go from building a tool to going to the moon, the capacity of a soul. So that requires an immense amount of energy to happen. And so connecting with our soul and harnessing the power there, like setting up the reactor there is very, very important. And I believe our innate self, in Arabic word, it describes it beautifully, the fitra, the core of yourself that tells you what is the right direction to go. In our religion, it says it's always pointing north to God. Everybody has one. And so the people that lose connection with that fitra are the people who are trained out of it. When we're first born, we are pure fitra. You're hungry, you act on it. You're sad, you act on it. And then to fit into society over time, we're molded, we're trained so we can get along with each other and we can work with each other. So that discipline and training does need to happen. But unfortunately, majority of us also lose connection with that raw version of ourselves where so much potential lies. So that's the second part. Connect with yourself, discover yourself. And in the process, people who are spiritual even more, they discover their connection with God or the higher power that they believe in. And that leads to the third level, which is harnessing with the power of purpose. We all have been created to do something. And this is one of the thoughts that I had to really reflect on when I first started to think about purpose, because you see so many people doing bad things. And one of the thoughts that came to my head is, what if I was built to do something bad? What if my purpose is to cause havoc on earth and ruin things? And then once again, I turned to my religious philosophies and learnings, and I realized that none of us have been created for evil. We have been created to do good and forbid evil. We're told we're not created in vain. We're created to basically be do-gooders on earth. fulfill God's commands on earth, and that's our job. And He never commands us to do some things that will hurt us or harm us in the long run. So if you can transcend the limits of what the noise is about spirituality, faith, relationship with God, and be true to yourself and can harness that concept that we're all created to do something important, you start to get a power from within. It's like you have your own energy reactor inside and it starts to propel you forward. And once you harness that raw cellular energy, you're ready to build your legacy because you start to realize you have power to change destiny, to create your own destiny. And so that means you can build the legacies you want or you can contribute towards it. Building a legacy doesn't necessarily mean that you get to see the end of it. Legacy is something that outlasts you. And so in the process, it's going to be benefiting many people. So that's where the transcendent philosophy comes from. It comes from my lived experience, my learned knowledge, and what I see in my patients. A lot of people who are addicted, they stay in addiction because they can't find a purpose to move out of. So this third pillar is also thanks to that. That I saw that when they had a purpose in their life, like a sun in the horizon, it was like they had a solar powered battery installed and they're able to move past the addiction.
And the fourth pillar?
The fourth pillar was the legacy pillar, right?
Okay, the legacy
That
pillar.
you get a chance, that you found now the power
Okay.
to design your journey and you now build your legacy.
So basically, you start with your mind, you go with your soul, then purpose in the entire world, and then what is the future that will be for the world?
Purpose is your battery.
Yeah, battery. Okay, purpose is the battery.
And your
So-
journey and your legacy is the product. So by investing in yourself, by rescuing yourself, by investing in yourself, by putting power back in yourself and harnessing from higher power, you are now free. You become a freer person. You become a higher person. You have transcended what majority of the world is stuck in. You transcend the world.
Let me ask you this question. You said like we need to do step by step, and those were kind of the sentences or we came through like 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Is there a possibility of starting where you are like completely depleted? You can perhaps start with purpose and then that breaks the mindset, the limiting mindset you have, or do you have to go in order? From your perspective,
it's not a linear thing and it's not just a time thing. Sometimes it may happen one thing at a time. Sometimes it happens all at once. I think it really depends on what part of your journey you're in, what's happening, what is your state. Because what's a good example here? Harnessing or purifying, refining a raw energy. You know, when you first start to do it, it takes a lot of energy. And as you get good at it and with repetition from learning from success and from failures, you figure out a process and the process makes things easier. So when you are first starting, you may have the capacity or the bandwidth to maybe just do one thing. But as your bandwidth increases because you have procedures in place, like inside your brain, because that's what the brain is doing. When you learn something new and the brain is developing that first neural connection, it takes the most energy versus when you have developed a neural pathway already and you're trying to connect things, it's a lot easier to do. And that's one of the ways that the brain works, the reward system works, addiction hijacks it that way, etc. That's how growth, learning, etc. works. So coming back to the question, when you have increased capacity, more resource to process things, it can become faster and sometimes it can happen in parallel, but it can be different points. It's not linear.
I see that happening because each one of those could have levels and you go to first level on this, first level on this, first level on this, first level on this. Then you come back, then you realize that, hey, I have another level, and you go through this cyclical process one after the other, and I have so much energy, but what is stopping me? Oh, it's my mindset. Let me improve on my mindset. I can totally envision me going through that process to achieve the next level. It's just that if you have somebody to point it out that there are like 4 dimensions to you, you're just working on one. So you're maxing out on one. What about this? So that's Pretty cool. I want to ask one question, and if that is also connected to, I know you're also interested in RPM. What does a win look like? Like, say, an example of patients, of course, without identifying the patient. Like, what happened when you had this philosophy, when your patient went through this philosophy and a thought process, and what differences did you see? Is it something that you're building up right now, or have you already seen results? Or if you have not seen results, what are the challenges you're facing?
I've been practicing telemedicine since before COVID was born, like literally. COVID accelerated, catalyzed the process of telemedicine integration, etc. I'm going to take a second to put in a joke. This is where I say, like, I feel that I was created to live in this time. I was made for this time because I've always wanted to be with people all the time, yet not be with people all the time. From anywhere I want to be with people, but I also want to be able to walk away like wherever I want to go. I want to be limitless in many ways. And at that time, that concept was so foreign. So when I first started doing telemedicine, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's so scary. How do you do it? You know, everybody was so scared of missing something. And I was like, well, we kind of do it already. When we're sitting at home and we're charting and we're calling patients and we're telling them what to do, and then we're doing those telemedicine visits already, just don't get paid for it. That was my transition. And now a good doctor is what I was taught in medical school, going back to the osteopathic days. We were told that a good doctor is able to diagnose about 80% of the stuff using their senses. For majority of the doctors, the biggest sensors are the ears, and then you use the eyes. If you're in a room with a patient, you can sometimes smell things. And as osteopathic doctors, our hands are an extra set of tools because that osteopathic manipulative treatment that we use, it requires us to become extra sensitive to pressures, texture, structure of the body. If it's working in the proper function as how it should be, I'm able to actually pinpoint a lot of things on a patient's body that even the patient forgets to say. I can localize where something is hurting or where the problem could be. So my hands are my diagnostic tools as well. And then a few of the rest of the things, that's where the diagnostic tools like labs, imaging, blood work, etc., like those things come in to like fine tune some things. But majority of the time when we didn't have all these science, it was the way that patients presented, the story of how they got themselves into that situation helps you normally understand where that's happening. So that basically we bring into telemedicine. Now, it is true that we still need to do things to make up for those senses that we aren't able to do anymore because the person isn't right in front of us. That's where that remote monitoring program is very, very powerful. For example, auscultation, when you're listening to heart and lungs, those sounds tell us so many things about if the body's working right or not already. To be able to do that, to capture that data so we can get to the next level of diagnostics is very, very important and powerful. A few other things that are really needed still are for things like pelvic exam is a big one. I think I wish I had access to being able to touch and feel. So that tactile. I think ultrasound may be a really good opportunity here to come in and integrate it and enable that remote monitoring from further away that could go a longer way. But then like trying to do what I do with my hands as an osteopathic doctor, being able to pick up the tissue abnormality, something that has that piezoelectric sensor pressure system would be really, really powerful if they could combine it. And then if we could have like a care kit for patients, which I plan to do for my telemedicine practice, is to put together some rapid at-home tests, like a urinary screening to see if you have a UTI, maybe a little bit of a vaginal swab test would be one that I would like to do to see if there's an STD in the process. Pregnancy test would be a good, nice kit to have. And then the common ones up here, like strep throat, COVID, etc. And maybe a glucometer, a blood pressure cuff. So I think these are the care kit that I would like to send to my patient as I'm developing and rolling out my program.
And this transcendent you and your telemedicine, are these
They're separate.
different different activities that you're doing. Okay.
They're different entities. They're different
These are
companies.
different entities. Okay. Perfect.
Telemedicine company is mainly for individuals who are trying to recover from addiction. So it's bringing addiction and chronic care together because I find that my patients really have a hard time accessing quality at the same time simultaneously. It's a small boutique care process at this time because in so many other things, I'm doing it little and getting it started that way. But it's that concierge care where you can have access to the doctor when you need it without having to wait for it. And the patients who are trying to do this, relapsing so many times and they're finally ready to quit, this will be a really good option for them because they need that care and connection. And the thing about Zenara Care, which is my telemedicine company, is that I do bring a lot of the transcendent philosophies into it. As the doctor, I take care of their body, chemically and in other lifestyle choice and processes, mental health, prescriptions, and counseling. But then after that, after you're stabilized mentally and physically, then the rest of the other dimensions are still waiting. So that's with in conjunction and collaboration with Transcendent You, I'm able to help with planning those parts out and prescribing and pursuing things that will help them move on from this stuck phase to their transcendent phase.
And we will go to the next step where I would love to get your idea about where the future lies, right? I mean, this is the legacy part of our conversation. One of the things that let me pivot off from the telemedicine part. You gave me a really good perspective from a doctor. So what are the patients missing, and how, as physicians or as health tech people, we actually address the needs, the emotional needs of the patient?
I think when you are thinking from the patient perspective, this technology needs to be easy to use. You know, as easy, kind of like how Steve Jobs has shown, the more you can make it usable by someone as little as a baby. You want to take the thinking process out of it. So this more it resembles what we do naturally without having to learn a lot of systems, that is going to be the best way you can integrate into the patient clients. You can find clients in that way. So if you're looking from the marketing perspective, that's something you want to keep in the forefront of your mind. Something you should be able to just point and shoot, stick without getting harmed, take the fear out of it as much as possible. So that means it needs to be something that can easily integrate it with your smartphone and your laptop and devices. Like all across the world, I think nothing has contributed to the advancement of literacy in our modern age as much as a cell phone.
Yeah,
I
that is true.
that's my personal opinion. I think if anybody does a research, I think I'll be pretty close to hitting the mark there. And so the more you can make it natural, second nature, the easier it's going to be. So being cognizant of patient health literacy and ease of access is going to be an important one. And remembering that I think the future of medicine is going to become what the term that's being used is precision medicine. I was using the word customized medicine, where you and I, we may be prescribed the same medicine. We may both be prescribed metformin for diabetes, but you have a very different biome inside of you than I do. My hormones are different from your hormones. My energy level, my demands are different from yours. You may eat something different than I do, etc. So being able to hone in on that and customize the medicine to the person who's taking it with our genetics and etc. I think that is the direction medicine is going to go. And especially with the advent of AI, that decision making may become even faster to do. So that's the direction that medicine is going. Another direction things are going, I think it's going in two directions. One is there's a group of people who are very anti technology and they want to stay as far away from it as possible. So I would say three directions. That's one. The other direction is absolutely tech savvy. Everything that comes on the market, they need the next gadget, the latest and next gadget. And then the people in the middle who's neither this side nor that side, they don't care as long as like their daily needs are met, they're happy. So I think the ones who are very anti-tech, they're going to continue to appreciate the in-person visit versus, you know, I feel like as I said, I'm built for this time. So I like being able to meet my doctor from home, not having to travel and waste time in traffic. I feel like that's such a waste of life.
You live in LA too, so we absolutely appreciate.
Yeah, I live outside of LA, but I used to live in DC. I used to live in Dhaka, and I've never loved traffic. Let's just
Oh,
say
yeah,
that.
fair enough.
And then having to wake up an hour, 2 hours extra early, 1 hour to
Uh,
travel and 1 hour to get ready before
mm,
that, just to get to
uh,
work. And then you don't get to leave work on time. Nobody's paying you for that neither. So this is part of my fulfillment is being able to have mastery and control over my time. And I think remote life allows me that, where I can just switch from one side to the next. So for these people, the remote monitoring devices are going to be like the missing piece that's going to give them even more freedom to keep moving forward.
Essentially, you're making a really good point that maybe this is not for everybody. So people who do prefer to have in-person visits, they have that option that is not taken away. It is for the people who are comfortable in doing this and feel that they will have the best treatment through this method is perfectly fine for them too, and somewhere in middle as need be.
Yeah, whichever direction, whichever need you need, you go in that path. But I think
Mm,
the tech savvy folks are here and
yeah.
you're gonna, once it's made available to them, because if
Mhm.
I feel this way, I know there's at least 1,000 other people who will probably feel that pain.
Let me ask you an offshoot question about this. We, in my native language, we have a saying called Neem Hakim Khatre Jaan. What that means is a half doctor is dangerous. As a patient, if I am so well informed about myself and I have internet knowledge to layer that, I will be challenging your assumptions to detriment to my health, right? Which may lead to detriment to my health. So how far should we be taking this tech savvy people who have access to all the tools and like literally understand every heartbeat or like know about heartbeat, not necessarily understand it. So where do you think is that balance where defer to the physician rather than like, hey, I'm going to take on my whole life and make choices where somebody else has spent 10 years just learning about these things. So where do you find that balance?
I'm glad that you asked that question. I think what it boils down to is being able to recognize and take accountability for the fact that personal well being is the person's job. It's not the doctor's job. It's not the computer's job. It is the person's job. Going back to that transcendent philosophy, your journey, you're the driver, you're the writer of your story. Everything else is an accessory. So I tell my doctor or my patients, I'm your GPS. I'm not driving the car for you. You got to drive the car. But just like a GPS, you can't trust everything the GPS says. So a good doctor will never be offended by good questions. So that's an important thing because I've had my GPS tell me turn left before and left is ocean. It doesn't make sense to me, right? So
Yeah.
you have to know enough to trust your instincts that this is not the right way. This is not the short way. Instead of going straight or taking a left, I just need to make a U-turn and I'll be on like the freeway is right behind me. I don't need to go to the next city to get back on the freeway. So that requires a knowledge base in my head. So the people who are tech savvy versus the people who are not tech savvy, I think the people who have the best navigation of their life's journey are the people who are constantly aware of themselves, of the knowledge around them, and they know how to make that connection. And they develop that process inside their brain of verification of what is right and what is inaccurate. So
Okay.
you need to become a scientist in yourself as is, and it doesn't require you to be tech savvy or tech phobic. So I think that is where the root is. And talking about the balance, that's also the balance, being able to identify which one of the advice, whether it's coming from the doctor or it's coming from the computer and it's coming from inside of you, which one makes the most sense. So for that, you need to develop and transcend your senses of being able to identify what makes sense or not. And you need to be connected with that. It's like a muscle, that instinct, it's a muscle. You need to develop it. And that comes with learning from different perspectives, test driving it, and figuring out this works for me and this doesn't work for me. So, to figure out which ones are limiting beliefs and limiting knowledge bases, move those out and integrate enabling knowledge base in that. The best patients I've worked with are the ones who know what they're doing and they appreciate explanation. So this should be a teamwork. I tell my patients, I'm an expert in how the human body works, how these medicines work that I'm about to prescribe you. There are many things in medicine I'm not an expert on. I will never do heart surgery. I have limited experience in delivering babies. So I'm not going to go open up any patients and do C-section deliveries on my own. I may assist, but I will not do it on my own. But I know my methadone, I know my buprenorphine, and I know what it's doing in your body. And you are the expert in what it feels like to live in your body. I can guarantee you I've never lived in your body. So for me to say that
Fair.
this is what you're feeling or you should be feeling is not fair neither. So for me, the way I approach taking care of my patients is teamwork. You tell me what your body is telling you, and I will modulate and fine tune the interventions I'm going to put on you. So that's how I approach my patients. And I do that whether they're not very tech savvy or they're techophilic, techophiles, whatever it is. I think that's what it comes down to. And of course, there's something to be said about what I like to call secondary experience. So first, a primary experience is the one that you go and you experience yourself through your senses, you acquire by living through the moment, or you can go through the secondary experience and learn it secondhand. Kind of like we all don't need to be hit on the head with an apple to discover gravity every single time. Some of us, we should be okay with understanding that Newton had an apple fall on his head and he discovered gravity. We don't need to discover gravity every time to go to the moon. So we can build on other people. And that's where coming to a doctor is beneficial because we have dissected the human body. We have looked inside. We have looked under a microscope to see what the cells look like. So there's that compound knowledge. And technology and AI is just speeding up all of this further. So together, bring it together. The faster you can process it and make sense of it, the further you can go.
I think the fact that you brought up Newton's example, it's a favorite example for something that you brought up earlier. I will mention that briefly a little later. But I completely appreciate this because the fact that you are willing and you're encouraging the patients to have their strong opinions about their health will probably have them listen to you more than they would probably listen to any other
Then
physician.
arguing
I
with
think
me.
yeah. So that's a good strategy in itself, right? Say, hey, I want the patient to listen to me because there are certain things that I'm an expert in. It's like, it's no question about that. As a physician, you are an expert. You understand human body more than I understand if I'm not a physician, right? Because as you said, they've looked at human body through microscope. You have dissected human bodies. I've not done, I feel. And thinking about and we are very biased beings, have certain fallacies that we fall into. Anyhow, the Newton example was going back to your financial example. It's like literally a person who can afford to sit in a park in 15th century with food falling on their head, right? It is a very luxurious experience. I mean, like 15th century people were starving, people
Most
were
of us
dying
get
of smallpox.
bird
Yeah,
droppings on our head.
I know. And then there is this person leisuring around in park and sitting around, and then food literally is falling on this person. And that's where you end up, that's the legacy we want to leave for our children, so they can think at a higher level, so that they don't have to worry about food and the leisure time. And they are not tilling ground from morning till night so that they cannot achieve their transcendent movement. And I think kind of brings everything. And Newton's is the example I give that, hey, you know what? And with the AI too, because AI is allowing us to taking away like the menial decisions away from us. It's making it for us and allowing that time for us to think about something at a higher level. And I think I'll be fascinated where we reach in 5 to 10 years as a human. It's scary, but also fascinating. It can go one way or the other. We can all
Yeah,
get destroyed, or we can be these beings that the world has never seen. One way or the other,
that's our
there is
choice. Yes, that's
yeah,
our choice.
the changes.
If we can use AI to fulfill our purpose, I think we'll have a transcendent future. But
Exactly.
our problem is we walk away from our purpose, and that the darkness, the cold, the lackings that come with walking away from the light, the warmth, the energy of purpose takes us down a very destructive path. And AI is a
100%.
tool, just like money, just like technology. And so it's going to depend on the wielder. Who is the wielder?
Hopefully it's not somebody who is like truly evil is not controlling
No,
the AI note. Yeah, hopefully not. All
I
right.
don't think it's going to happen, but that's a discussion for another day.
Hopefully not. So I want to combine the last question, being sensitive to time, into two. One is like you can answer any question you want, Dr. Sarah, that we have not touched upon or you think is very important, or we can answer a question and advice to people who are getting into health tech or into DO area, becoming a doctor. So what would be their advice, considering that a lot of changes, as we mentioned, AI changes and technology changes and patient expectations are changing? What is your advice to these young doctors and health tech people, engineers?
I think it's a way of leaving the audience with something hopefully that will benefit them. So the advice I'm going to give to the new up and coming doctor and health tech expert is the advice I would now give myself. So I'm going to tell you what I wish my younger self knew, which is the world is going to run its course. We can't please everybody and we shouldn't make ourselves responsible for doing everything right and making everybody happy, because that is an expectation that is going to set you up to fail. Instead, enjoy your journey. Their whole life is an adventure. As soon as you figure out that you're here to experience your journey, and in some ways, I am asking you to become a little egocentric. It is very contrarian, but I'm asking you to become a little egocentric. I know we look at it in a very negative way, um, but it can turn into a wonderful experience if your ego is nurtured to be a healthy one. And you have power over that. Who will try to intimidate you or make you lose control over your journey, over your experiences. And that's probably coming oftentimes from their own past limiting beliefs. It's okay to let them have their space, to let them have their belief, but you don't have to have their belief. And we're allowed to have our own belief system in how we operate in the world, as long as it is helping us fulfill our purpose of putting light, life, and love into the world. So as long as that's helping you build your legacy, and anybody who's resonating with it, they know that they want to do something good with their legacy. None of them want their legacy to be something that destroys the world. It's not just about being remembered. It's also because when you good out into the world, to put it out, it has to come through you. When it comes through you, you experience it. And that experience is pure euphoria. And that we're okay to be addicted to. That's what we're designed to be addicted to, that euphoria. So life will be hard. There will be challenges. Take them as growth opportunities, because growth is uncomfortable. Some growth breaks you, but it's about what do you become afterwards. That's in your power. I hope that was helpful.
And was extremely helpful. You gave another framework, life, light, and love. Yeah, the triple L's. And then I think you also beautifully explained the idea of kintsugi, where life will break you, but kintsugi is a concept in Japan where ceramics break down. You put it together with gold glue, and when the ceramics come together, it has this golden broken parts where it has been set together. It is more valuable before.
But to me, I think the most important thing I want to make sure that the person hears, and I want you to hear it too, is that you're designed to experience this. Everything has been brought together for you to experience it. And for those who believe in God, I believe experiencing this allows us to experience Him, and it develops our relationship with Him. We're the center of our story, right? The stories that make the biggest impression on us is the one that we get to experience. So our lives are about our experiences. And so if we focus on making it the best experience that helps us grow, makes us feel fulfilled, makes us connected, you have lived. So live.
Dr. Sarah, thank you very much.
You're
Really
very-
appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for your time. I truly appreciate
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for patiently listening to me and the great
it.
questions.